Today we're going to talk about how do we have the most loving, thriving, healthy baby. So we talked earlier about milestones, how your baby goes through these certain milestones of development. And I'm quite passionate about this subject because I kind of want you to know that these milestones are a window of time. They're a window of neurological development. We only get to go through them once. And each milestone builds upon the previous milestone. So not only do they have to go in the right sequence, which obviously nature has decided for us, but they also have to have as much completion as possible because that's truly the foundation of the next one. Keep in mind that when our babies get to be in their late 20s, mid 20s or late 20s, this is when our neurological development is basically finalized. And what do we want? What is the definition of a successful adult? Well, I saw a really good article on NPR about this subject. They interviewed like thousands of people all across the country of every walk of life, from plumbers to, actors or doctors. Doesn't matter really what they're, moms, school teachers, firefighters, the entire spectrum of our country. And everybody kind of concluded to be successful from your perception, two things: that you have really good critical thinking and you have good communication skills. Well, that's really it. So when we finally get into our mid-20s, that's when our prefrontal cortex finally fully develops, and that's our decision. That's where we actually make our executive decisions. So that's critical thinking. But the emotional components, those actually start very early in life, roughly in our 12th and 13th month of life. That's when that starts developing. So you can tell that we have these windows that are so important to fully finalize so that each one develops and develops and develops. So the first phase of development, there are basically, if you think about it, without even any science or like studies on this, what does a baby need to do? A baby has to have some motor skills. They have to be able to move their head around, find the breast, and suckle. They need to have that muscle or motor control. Then they need to be able to digest the food and obviously move it down through peristalsis into the stomach so they can digest the food, and then they have to eliminate it, they have to poop. So this is basically gut and digestion, very first step. And keep in mind that it's kind of already started before delivery, but that is all your child needs to do on like day one. Basically able to move the head, eat the food, gut, digest, poop. The second is going to be sleep. Now, keep in mind that if our child has a problem with digestion, if there's stress on the nervous system, primarily the vagus nerve, and they're getting to these kind of colicky symptoms, well, they're not going to sleep well. If we don't sleep well, we're not really recharging the brain well enough for the next day, and that's also going to slow down all of our development. So sleep is super important. Not only is sleep important, but even the waking hours, the baby needs to be calm. Calm is a very, very, very important word in neurodevelopment. Even as adults, but mostly as children, it's okay if we're having this go-go activity, but they have to find calm. That's when we know their nervous system is balanced between that parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. The motor milestones to control the head and to control the suckling will eventually develop into other motor skills such as crawling and walking. So this is all in phase one. It's just that simple, brand new baby has to move their mouth, has to move their head, has to digest food, has to poop. Now phase two, much more complex neurological functions, are things like speech and communication. Now, once we start to have our speech and communication, this helps us to socialize. This helps us to interact with our other children, to play, to engage in activity. Now, that obviously will lead into our emotional development because of our behaviors with other children, our ability to just kind of react with other kids. Then that phase starts, at that early age, starts that cognitive or that learning phase. Now, keep in mind that that's the phase that doesn't end until 2023, 24. So we have a long journey in that cognitive, which is critical thinking. We have another really long journey in our emotions, which is obviously our emotional regulation. So on a previous video, I mentioned to you that I heard a report on NPR about what does an individual claim as their success? How did they get there? So regardless of the field that they're in, whether it's just labor or service or working with individuals, nurses, doctors, school teachers, IT professionals, it doesn't really matter what your profession is. How do these individuals say, this is how I become successful? And everybody, all across the board, basically came down to two things: your ability to have critical thinking and your ability to communicate. So it really has to do with cognitive and emotional regulation. That starts as infancy, goes through these processes that we just mentioned, ends in our mid-20s. That's what I'm looking for. I really don't want your baby to not be calm. I really don't want your baby to have colic and to be frustrated and to basically kind of have the whole house at that time. I mean, one of our logo statements is happy kids, happy families. So it's a really, really big effect on everybody when a baby has colic or when they're not functioning well. These are a problem. But I want you to know that these problems can be really, really helpful. They could point the way to a solution with the ultimate goal of critical thinking and emotional and communication regulation down the road. So if your baby does have colic, if your baby is a poor pooper, if your baby does not sleep well, these processes, especially as an infant, have tremendous ability to adapt and to change. So we can really look at something like colic or a poor pooper or fussy babies as a way to understand what's happening much more complicated in the nervous system. Chiropractors look really, really deep into these challenges, not just the superficial symptoms. We want to know what the process of their body is so that we can, again, get to that end stage of potential for our baby. So this is a difficult journey for some families, I understand, and I want you to know that we have lots of compassion for when you go to the internet, if you will, or even to your traditional medical doctor, and they say, well, your baby will just grow out of it. Change your diet. Now, we want to celebrate or support the diet world, that group of people out there, the nutritionists. We love that. We are 1,000% behind that. But we are neurologically based. So if our children's nervous system is regulating the environment well, the food that's brought in, how to assimilate it, how to eliminate it, how to go to their next phase of development, this is all neurologically based. So that's the world that we're in. We want to support these decisions for you and your family so that your babies not only have a wonderful experience with not only you, but the whole household, but they thrive. And remember, a key word for thriving is that your baby is calm. We really want that to occur in your household too. So attached to this video is a video from Dr. Matt. He's our friend out in Illinois with the PX family. It's an excellent video explaining what I basically just talked about from a different perspective. So really appreciate if you'd watch that video. Thank you for your time. I'm Dr. Jim, 5 Parks Chiropractic.